One of the most underutilized tools in the musical theater composer's tool belt is musical modes. With a slight change of your starting note, aka your tonic, you can create a whimsical world, put the audience on edge, pull your protagonist through a challenge, or reveal what's truly happening underneath a character's thought. And all you have to do is change one note. Okay, so what is a mode? Essentially, if we are looking at a major scale, it is changing which note in that scale that we are actually starting on. For instance, if we take the C major scale, no sharps, no flats, and we instead start on D for the scale, then that's changing the mode. Same thing if we were to start on F or start on G. We'll get there. And each one of these modes has a distinct sound to it, which is incredibly useful to pull us out of our normal boxes of major and natural minor, which are also both modes. We should just dive in. Beginning with the major scale itself, also known as the Ionian Mode. What distinguishes one note from another is the variation in the distance between each note of the scale. So, in a major scale, in Ionian, we have a full step, half step, full step, full step, full step, half step. That should sound pretty familiar to you. With the half steps being between the scale degrees 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, our ears are being pulled to certain places in the scale that feel very certain and stable and also focus on major chords. Naturally, in this mode, the scale degrees 1, 4, and 5 all have major chords attached to them, and they all seem to pull our ear back around to our tonic, to the C. In fact, most chord progressions built in this mode use the chords 1, 4, and 5 somewhere in that progression as pillars, even if there are other chords added in. And this is considered a major mode, of course, because the third scale degree is 2 whole steps between the tonic and the third, making it a major third. If there's a major third, it is a major mode. Ionian Mode gives us a sense of stability, brightness, cheerfulness, and a distinct lack of tension. But let's move upward. If we were to move the tonic of this C major scale up 1 to D, then suddenly, with D as the tonic, we are in the Dorian Mode. Side note, if I ever write a musical version of The Picture of Dorian Gray, you can 100% bet that I will be creating the whole thing out of Dorian Mode. With Dorian now starting on what used to be our second scale degree here on the D, then we now have our distances as whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step. The third scale degree is now only a step and a half away from our tonic, which means that that is a minor third, making this a minor mode. But this is not the natural minor mode that we are all familiar with. We'll get there, but this is something slightly different. The minor feeling of this mode definitely has a moody and brooding feel to it, right? But then we have our raised 6, which provides us something that feels maybe like hope or optimism. Or maybe it's a battle between that brightness of the top of the scale and the darkness of the bottom of the scale. It's interesting. But if we shift our tonic up one more to E now, we are entering what we call the Phrygian Mode. Phrygian is another minor mode because we again have a minor third in here. But with our new scale degrees, we're gonna have a minor second and a minor sixth, which gives us half step, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. It's funky, it's dark, and it kind of throws you off any sense of feeling grounded. Phrygian Mode is built upon tension, especially with that minor second in there, and it gives us a sense of foreboding, and it feels almost a little cumbersome. This is a great mode to use if you want something to feel particularly dark and crunchy and otherworldly. On the complete opposite side of that, we now move up to a staple of the musical theater canon, the Lydian Mode. The Lydian Mode here will start on F, what was once our fourth scale degree, and it will be our first return to a major mode because we do have a major relationship between the first and the third here. In fact, the only real difference between the Lydian Mode and the Ionian Mode, or our normal major scale, is that we are now raising our fourth scale degree. So now in this mode, we have whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. That lift on the fourth scale degree feels fun and mildly jarring, but then we return to something that feels very natural and stable to us. Lydian Mode lends itself to a feeling of whimsy, wonder, and a kind of floating quality, but without providing too much tension. You will find this mode utilized all over the musical theater canon, and particularly by Alan Menken in the Disney canon, for an example. Also, if this video has been useful to you so far, please give it a little like so it can spread to more people like you. Thank you so much. Moving up to our next major mode, we are moving on to Mixolydian Mode, starting on the 5th scale degree, or in this case, G. Also very similar to Ionian Mode, but instead of raising the 4th like we did in Lydian, now we are going to actually lower the 7th. So we have whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. Now that may sound familiar to you, or at least relatively normal, since lowering the 7th scale degree is something that's pretty popular to do in jazz, R&B, and many other types of music. Without that leading tone on the 7th scale degree, there's something that feels kind of rebellious about this mode, almost like we're doing something a little dark, a little dangerous, as like a mix-up from that normal major that we get. Again, rock, blues, R&B, jazz. Without the constant ear pulling back to our tonic in this mode, you have a lot of flexibility to play around with your chord progressions and keep the ear in suspense for pretty much as long as you want it to. Our next mode will be very familiar to you. Starting here on an A, or on what was once our 6th scale degree, we have our natural minor, aka the Aeolian Mode. When we talk about relative minors to a major scale, this is the mode we are talking about, starting on the 6th degree of that major scale. And here we are going to have a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Again, we have that minor 3rd, it is a minor mode, but then we have this kind of wistfulness at the top of the scale. This mode seems to wander, a bit lost in its own sadness, which may be why it is often used for songs that are kind of broody or have a deep sadness attached to them. You will find Aeolian in any and all types of music. It is a super useful one. But for a much rarer mode, we now turn to the Locrian Mode, which starts on our 7th scale degree, or in this case, B. This one is another minor mode because we do have that minor 3rd there, but I feel like it's kind of in a category of its own. Hold on to your butts. So we have half step, whole, half, whole. For those of you who picked up on it, yes, you are correct. This is the only one of these modes that does not have a perfect 5th in it. Instead of a perfect 5th, we are actually lowering that 5th to a tritone. Now, to be fair, Lydian also had a tritone, but with that 4th being lifted, we still had our 5th intact. And the 5th in the Lydian Mode is still a major chord, and it's pulling our ear right on back to the tonic. Here, however, in Locrian, with that tritone, that's not pulling our ear anywhere in particular. In fact, there's a lot of crunchiness and weirdness in this kind of mode that doesn't pull our ear in any particular direction. It feels a little bit chaotic. It's like we're in a sea of questions. Like, who are we? Where are we? What's going on? And we can use it in that way too. This mode is tense, unstable, and a bit creepy, which I personally love. What a great way to create something that sounds otherworldly or actively dangerous without providing something for the ear to ground to. It's chaotic, it's great. And that's gonna wrap us all the way back up to C, which brings us back to our Ionian mode once again. So as you heard across these modes, by changing your tonic and the scale degrees and the distance between notes as you create these scales, you are able to create these different emotional tones, which are super useful in your shows for character creation and subtext and world building. Is your character off on a fantastical adventure? Throw in some Lydian. Did something tragic just occur that gives a sense of foreboding to the world, like there's a doom coming? How about some Phrygian? Is your character being haunted by a thought that's throwing them into complete and utter chaos? How about we use some Locrian Mode? Music is subtext that helps create the world, build character, and tell the story through resonance. And if you want to learn about some other ways you can do this by using musical genres, then you should watch this video next. Otherwise,
thank you all for being here with me today, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers!